Welcome to Shift, everybody. If you're new with us, you can scan this code, scroll down, and fill out the Connect card, and we will send you free Opus coffee this week. We changed it up to support local coffee shops, plus Starbucks is overrated anyway. Today is Second Shift. For those of you who are new with us, this is our 1-hour group that goes over all things Shift. As open as we are, we know that you probably still have questions, and this is the place to ask them. If you didn't register, that's fine. Feel free to stay. Our next online-only service is going to be on the 27th. A lot of us are going to be traveling from Thanksgiving, and the rest of us are going to be recovering from our food comas. You can catch the teaching live on our YouTube at 10:30 a.m. On the 19th, we will be handing out all the meals made from our generosity jars. The details are still being finalized, but once we get it all figured out, we'll let you know how you can help. Keep an eye out for more information. And that's all we got, so let's jump into week 1 of Up in My Feels.
I think that everyone that knows me personally knows, is aware of the fact that I am a person that's in touch with their emotions, right? There's nothing I can do about it. I used to really hate it. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I could cry at the drop of a hat. It's my mom's fault. She gave it to me. There's nothing I can do about it. I used to really hate it, and while I don't love it, they just all die. Okay, that's fine. While I don't actually love it, I have come to accept it, what it is. And it is what it is. So anyway, I don't know if you guys are, if anybody's on TikTok or Reels or anything, there's a trend that's going on right now where they show like themselves at the current age, and then as the song plays, it's 1 year previous to that until they get to however long. So my daughter did one this past week, and it's of her and her little brother starting this year, and then going back, pictures of the two of them going all the way back to like she was 8 years old. All right, so she sent that to us without any warning of what was coming, and I watched that video, and I had to, the video's not even 60 seconds. I think it might be like 40 seconds long, and I was sobbing, in tears, crying. Like I was going to show it to you, and maybe if it comes up later, we'll show it to you later. But I can't watch it anymore. Like I've got it on my phone. I saved it because it's super cute. But if I were to show it to you and watch it, then my face would just, it's ugly cry, people. Like that's just how it is.
And it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin goes turning to something.
Part of the reason that I hated that so much is because I felt like it made me less of a man to cry. And that wasn't because of something that my parents instilled in me. That wasn't something that they handed down to me. My parents are and were very affectionate, very loving people. Maybe it was culture. I don't know. But I always felt very judged when those emotions would come out, right? I could see how certain men would look at me when I was being emotional in the moment. I'm also honest enough to say that that could have all totally been in my head, right? Like I could have just been projecting that onto other people. But as I've gotten older, one of the things I've realized is that there's nothing wrong with emotions, right? There's just nothing wrong with them. We all experience them. We all have them. And depending on what's going on, they're different emotions. It's when we suppress those emotions, like when we push those emotions down, that they can become explosive and become dangerous. And we see it happening a lot. We see these explosions of emotion all over social media. And I don't know if it's happening more or if it's just that we're seeing it more. But I think that we can all admit that the last few years or 10 have been really stressful, right? It's been a season, and we all feel that, right? And add to all of that, we've just started the holiday seasons, right? Which is an incredibly stressful season for most people, right? And then add to that the midterms that are coming up next week, and you put all of that in there together, and it is a dangerous cocktail if we're not dealing with our emotions in a healthy way. So before we jump into our first emotion, I'd like to welcome everybody that's here in person and online to Shift. My name is Joe, and I'm the lead pastor here. And we are in a brand new series for the next few weeks before Thanksgiving that we've called Up in My Feels. And each week we're going to look at a different emotion that we all experience. What we're going to do is we're going to look at a scenario where Jesus experienced these emotions, how he dealt with them, and then how that wisdom can inform us today. So it's said that Jesus experienced the full range of human emotions, right? And the four accounts of the life of Jesus, you can identify 39 different emotions that Jesus experienced. Just different moments in his life. He experienced grief. The story we're going to talk about here, when his friend Lazarus died, when he looked out over Jerusalem and saw the path that they were choosing, it brought grief. He experienced anger all the time, specifically directed at religious leaders that propped up structures that oppressed people. Okay, he experienced anger. He experienced joy. He had people come back to him and report like, hey, this is what God is doing. He experienced joy. The cross, and before the cross, he experienced loneliness, discouragement, agony. So Jesus experienced everything and anything that because he embraced his humanity. All right. So the encounter that we're going to look at this morning, Jesus has this interaction with a mourning mother. All right, and it's found in Luke's account in chapter 7. It says, soon afterward, Jesus went with his disciples to the village of Nain, and a large crowd followed him. A funeral procession was coming out as he approached the village gate. The young man who had died was a widow's only son, and a large crowd from the village was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart overflowed with compassion. Don't cry, he said. Then he walked over to the coffin and touched it, and the bearer stopped. Young man, he said, I tell you, get up. Then the dead boy sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Great fear swept the crowd, and they praised God, saying, a mighty prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people today. All right? Now, what we see here is that Jesus sees this funeral procession coming up, and with this funeral procession, there would have been it said a large crowd, but part of that large crowd would have been these professional mourners. They had people that created a healthy space for people to actually mourn. We don't do that very well today, right? We do celebrations of life so we can celebrate instead of giving places to grieve and to mourn. But they were really good at it, still are very good at it. And so they had this whole big processional. They would have had instruments. There would have been wailing and instruments going on. And Jesus sees this, and he sees this woman who has lost her only child. It doesn't give us much detail about this person other than she's a widow and that her son died. We don't know how old the son is. We don't know any of the circumstances around it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think back to a small phrase that you probably overlooked when you read it or when you heard me read it to you. And it's the phrase, when the Lord saw her. That Jesus saw her. Okay? Now in the Greek, it doesn't mean that I looked at you, right? It doesn't mean that he saw her. It means to see somebody with your mind. It means to experience. Okay, it means to perceive. So that when he saw her, he saw all that she was in that moment. He saw her pain, he saw her despair, he saw her anxiety, her worry. He saw all of those things in where she was. So he actually saw all of her. So when I read this, I start thinking, how often do I actually see people? Right? Like I see all of you, right? I see people every day. But how many times do I actually stop and see people? I'm the person on the side of the road with a sign. How many times do I actually see them? Or maybe it's a coworker or somebody you see on a regular basis and they're just a little off that day, right? Do we see them? Or maybe it's a friend or a loved one that's going through something. You know, I think that, honestly, I think most of the time we don't see people that way, not because we're jerks or because we don't care. I think most of the time we don't see people because we don't know what to do. And so if I don't see somebody, then I don't have to try, right? And not because you're jerks, because you don't know what to do. Like, I can't cure homelessness, so I can just ignore it. If I don't see it, I don't have to do anything about it. And that's not because I'm a jerk. It's because I don't know what to do. Am I actually hurting or helping this person, right? If I see somebody that's like in emotional stress or whatever, what do I do? Well, I'm just going to act like everything's okay. Hey, how's it going? Great. Right? And it's not because, again, that we're jerks or whatever. It's because I don't know what to do. Does that track with anyone? Does anybody resonate with that too? Now, in the 4 accounts of Jesus' life, we see over 40 times that Jesus saw somebody. That Jesus saw someone, right? And it was like he was seeing everyone. And I don't want to Superman Jesus here, okay? I don't want to Superman him because it's really easy to dismiss the things that Jesus did or said or some of those interactions, because we could simply say, well, Jesus was God. Of course he knew what they were thinking because he read their minds or something like that. But we know that Jesus took his God goggles off when he walked around, okay? Because Paul tells us, the Apostle Paul tells us in his letter to the Philippian church, that Jesus did not consider equality with God something to be held on to. That Jesus didn't consider staying God something to be grasped, but he humbled himself. And so he embraced his humanity while he was here, all right? So he's fully human. So no, I don't think that he read people's minds, all right? And so I think that Jesus just really paid attention. I think that Jesus was just really in tune with the people around him, and he knew how to be there with people. Like, I think Jesus was really good about not being distracted, and that if he was with somebody, he was actually with somebody. So I want to stay in that verse 13. So it says that he saw her, right? So he's experiencing her. He's perceiving her right where she's at. It then goes on to say that when Jesus saw her, his heart overflowed with compassion. Now, this is my favorite Greek word, all right? I've done it before. It's been many, many months. I'm going to learn you some Greek, okay? You're going to learn how to say this. I even had it spelled out for you guys. I will post it later or something, all right? It's the Greek word. Anytime you see Jesus having compassion for somebody, it's this word in the New Testament. It's the Greek word splagnizomai. Splagnizomai. I love how it just comes off this splagnizomai. You know, splagnizomai, all right? And it means to yearn from the bowels, okay? And I'm not talking about like a Taco Bell yearning, okay? In the first century, the guts were seen as the seat of love and pity, all right? So it's this word that describes like this gut feeling, all right? This like gut-wrenching feeling. And the first time that I experienced this, that I can honestly remember, like this gut reaction that caused the physical response, I was a freshman in high school, all right? And I was dating a young woman by the name of Carolina Adams. And I was in L-O-V-E, love. Sorry, babe. Obviously, I did not marry Carolina, but we were convinced. You could not tell us that we were not going to get married when we got older. It went so far, I know, it went so far that she, on her homework, would sign her name, Carolina Adams hyphenated Smith, because we were convinced that we were going to be in love, or that we were going to get married, all right? Like I said, obviously, we did not. I married Tori. You're welcome. And I'm totally kidding. I'm walking home. We did not get married, but we are still very close friends. I love Carolina and her family deeply. I was even blessed and privileged enough to be the officiant at her little sister's wedding this past summer. So we have stayed in touch this whole time. And yeah, so it ended up really well. How it ended, though, happened because of something that happened this summer between my freshman and sophomore year. I went to church camp. Now, if you have never been to church camp, how do I describe church camp for you? And this is my experience with church camp. Maybe yours was different. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of friends that you hadn't seen all year. Like, this was before social media and cell phones. We wrote letters. Okay, that's how it worked, or made phone calls. And only during certain times, because they were long distance phone calls. And then you get beat if your parents showed up with, like, who's calling to, you know what I mean? So it was a lot of friends that you hadn't seen for an entire year, a lot of really fun games. We played a ton of sports, and they always had crazy games for us to play. Lots of swimming, lots of running around and crashing, and fun activities involved. It was a ton of fun, right? And then every night followed by 2 hours. 2 hours of intense preaching designed to create this manipulation. All right, it was emotional manipulation that would crescendo into this invitation moment where they had this music that was designed, that was specific to elicit an emotional response from tired teenagers, where at this altar call we would go forward every single night, so that we could confess anything and everything, so that we could stay out of eternal conscious torment of hell. Sounds fun, doesn't it? It was horrible. And that entire week, I got blasted that Carolina was going to go to hell because she was Mormon, and that I would go to hell for dating her. And that if I really loved her, that I would break up with her. And then I would try to convert her, because my denomination obviously had all the facts right. Obviously. So, I was a 15-year-old kid. I'm a 15-year-old kid who can hardly handle the intensity of the puppy love that we were experiencing, right? And now all of a sudden I'm being told by these people that are my spiritual leaders that this thing that brings me so much joy is not only wrong, but maybe even evil. And I didn't know what to do with that. Don't even worry about it, you guys. Or maybe worry about it, I don't know. Yeah, for real, don't worry about it. We don't need it. I mean, you want to talk about gut-wrenching, right? So when I got home, I did what they told me to. I got home, and I called Carolina, and out of the blue, I broke up with her. And she could not understand why. And to be completely honest, I couldn't either. I remember going outside. I was a little dramatic. I went outside, and we had like a half acre to an acre, and there was a wooded area with a pond. And I remember walking out there towards the pond and just yelling into the sky, like yelling at God, because I just couldn't understand why he was making me do this. It made me physically sick to my stomach, all right? So it was an emotion that created a physical reaction. Splagnizomai, all right? That's what the word means. And when Jesus saw her, he had compassion, and that emotion elicited a physical response. There was a reaction that happened physically in Jesus's body. Now, Jesus goes over to the coffin and he touches it. Now, just a side note, to do this, the fact that Jesus did this would have he broke religious tradition. All right? Which always makes me laugh when religious people come at us for crossing lines to go love on people, because Jesus did it all the time. Any time in the New Testament you see people drawing lines, whether it's religious or political or ethnic or patriarchal or whatever, Jesus would go out of his way to cross those lines and to love on people. Look it up. Every time somebody drew a line, he went across it, invited others to join him, and loved the people that were on that side of the line. Now, back to the miracle. So Jesus touches the coffin, raises the boy from the dead. Now, what we can't do is miss the subtext of this miracle, okay? Because this woman is now without means. She has no husband, and her son, depending on his age, was the only means of anything for her. And they're both gone. So now she would have resorted to having to beg or worse to make ends meet. So the fact that Jesus raises this boy and gives her that back attacks the very structure of how they set up their society. So Jesus is bringing hope back into this woman's life. Now, I also, and I don't want to sweep this under the rug, I also recognize the quagmire that this creates. The questions that this creates. Why does Jesus heal here and not over here? Why has God not healed my mother? For those of you who don't know, who's been in an almost 10-year battle with multiple myeloma, a blood cancer. So I did a lot of thinking about this. I've done a lot of thinking about this over the years, and I have come up with an answer. So if you're a note taker, I would go ahead and take this down, write this down. Here's the answer. Why does God heal here and not over here? And here's the answer. I don't know. I don't know. Guys, I have listened to all the sermons, I've read all the books, and I still have not found an answer that satisfies that question. The only answer I can come up with is I don't know. I have read people far smarter, far spiritualer, more spiritual? Spiritualer is not a word. Far smarter. And I haven't found an answer that satisfies it. I don't know that there is. I don't know that we'll ever find one. So I don't want to ignore it. I want to recognize it, but I also want to not spend my time there because I can't control that. There's nothing I can do to control that. The only thing that I can control is me, what I do, and how I respond to it. Now, Jesus really saw this woman in her pain. And I think some of the things that we can control are this. Some of us need to be seen. Some of us need to be seen where we are. Some of us hide our pain or our shame or whatever that is. And I will say this, though. It is up to you who you allow to see you and allow to experience that with you. All right, that is up to you and how that happens. But I also think that we should really recognize, wrap our arms around the fact and actually know that if Jesus actually really saw this woman in her pain for who she was, that he really actually sees us in our pain or shame or whatever. And that if Jesus actually really cared about this woman in her situation, then Jesus actually really cares about us in our situations. So then the questions that I think through are things like, how can we be seen? Right? How do we allow God to see us in whatever we're in? How do we allow others to see us in our situation? How can we allow others to step into our pain with us? And that's a hard one because nobody likes to ask for help. Now, here comes one of the tricky parts. Because yes, we talk about it all the time. I believe that this idea that Jesus talks about of kingdom has a spiritual side to it. Absolutely, 100%. But one of the things that the church ignores the vast majority of the time is the physical side of this idea of kingdom. The physical aspect of this that we call kingdom. All right? Maybe some of us here aren't in a season where we need to be seen. So maybe for us, we need to be the ones doing the seeing. maybe we need to be the ones that are looking, that see somebody and actually experience or perceive where they are. I think that needs to be part of our reflection as we get ready to go into that, of seeing and then being moved to action, of allowing that compassion, splagnizomai, the gut reaction, to move us to compassion, to move us to actually do something about it. Are we seeing those that need to be seen? How are we helping people to overcome the things that are actually hurting them? Right? Some people can help with time, right? Some can help with talent. Some can help with resources. But if we all play a part in that idea of kingdom, right, then that brings flourishing to the people around us. 2 Fridays ago, not this past Friday, but the Friday before it, I was lucky enough to be a part of the Pride student Halloween party. We had more than 50 marginalized kids come and hang out. Now, let me repeat that, just so that everybody understands that. In the United States, in 2022, we held a costume party for marginalized students here. Several other adults were part of it. I mean, I just got to be there. We had some planning stuff, but there were two particular adults. If they watch this, Phoenix and Madison, your rock stars, they were the ones that did the heavy lifting and all the planning. But we had games, we had face painting, we had music that created this little impromptu dance floor. There was food, we had a costume contest. It's any kind of Halloween party that you ever been to for kids, we did it. We had like it wasn't a pin the tail on the donkey, it was a pin the spider on the cobweb game, and there was a spin the wheel trivia game. It was just full on cheese. You know what I mean? We just leaned into it. And they came in their costumes and stuff, and it was a ton of fun. And for 2 hours, they got to just be kids. They didn't have to worry about attacks that they deal with on the regular. They didn't have to worry about legislation aimed at them. They got to be kids at a costume party for Halloween. And they got tons of candy. And if I could be honest here, I'm going to be super honest. It felt like church. It felt like church. And I was allowed to be a part of something sacred and holy. And I felt the Spirit move there. I mean, I can remember stepping back and just seeing all of these kids having fun and just like being moved. Because there was joy and there was laughter. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, Jesus is calling us to keep crossing lines so that we can really see people, so that we can really be seen. And maybe Jesus is calling us to cross those lines so we can enter into somebody else's pain and feel the gut-wrenching and then do something about it. So I'm gonna do something that I don't do. Like, I don't think I've ever done this. I'm going to beg. I'm begging for people to get involved. And please hear me when I say this. I don't mean opening a door. I don't mean coffee. I don't mean the tech team or check-in or treehouse. Those are important. And those have to happen, right? For this to take place, and this is really good, you guys. For this to take place, it needs people to do certain things. And that's great. And if you want to be able to start there, that's awesome. We can help you do that. But that's not what I'm talking about. The more of us pulling together, the more people will be seen. And the more people will be seen, the more help that they can actually get. The more people see, the more we'll move to do something about it. And I don't say this lightly, but Shift, whether you're here in person or online, we've got Shift people all over the place. We are blessed. We are blessed because the work that we do here actually saves lives. And this is great. This is awesome, and I love doing this every week. I love getting together with you guys. I love what we're doing, And this is great, and I'm not downplaying it, but this isn't the point. This here is great, but it's not the point. The things that we do, the things that we're called to do if we're following Jesus, bring real, tangible things to our city. And when I say what we do here matters, I don't mean that in some churchy spiritual way. Again, not downplaying that side, but we just never talk about the physical side of stuff. But I'm talking about in real, concrete, tangible, Gainesville is better ways. So the questions that I think through is we either need to be seen or we need to start seeing. And which one is it? So I'm going to do is we're going to turn down the lights. We're going to have our little reflection time. And instead of the band, I've got a song queued up here in just a second that Jake's going to play for us. It's by an artist. Her name is Megan Brown. And it's in Spotify. Oh, yeah, the computer's not working. Okay. I'll stall for a second. Okay, Spotify's working. But it's by a woman, a young woman by the name of Megan Brown. If you haven't heard of her, go find her stuff. She's on iTunes and Amazon and Spotify. She is an ex-megachurch worship leader. And much like most of us here on the stream or in person that have come out of the megachurch culture and just the harm that it can do to certain people, she left and said no more of that. And the music that she writes now is very heartfelt. The song that we were going to listen to is called Open Your Mind. We may not be listening to it. I will post it later. We're loading? All right. But whether we're able to listen to it now or you listen to it, I'm going to post it later. I want you to listen to it, all right? And it's the perspective of somebody that really needs to be seen. And it's her story. And doggone it. It was fine all morning. I hate this, you guys. I'm sorry. So I guess what we'll do instead is, maybe? Maybe? I don't have my phone. You have my phone. Oh, wait. No. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. Okay, that's the last song. So that was real herky-jerky. All right, but what I want you to do is I want you to listen to this song. We're not going to play the entire song, but I just want you to listen to the first few little bit. I'm going to pray, and then while we're listening to that song, that's going to be like our reflection moment, okay? And if anybody's willing or ready or wants to, we'll participate in communion during this song. And communion, we have these little tiny packets in there. They are little, really insignificant reminders and symbols of the healing that Christ brought to humanity so that we could be seen.